After I was reborn, my whole family could hear my thoughts. Should I tell Dad that his beloved adopted son is actually Mom's illegitimate child? I saw Dad take the illegitimate son's hand, and he suddenly flinched. It's better not to tell my second sister, Zoe, that she was deliberately raised to be useless by Mom. I saw Zoe, engrossed in her game, suddenly find her phone too hot to handle. If my eldest sister, Chloe, knew Mom had someone cause her leg injury, would she be heartbroken? I saw Chloe sitting in her wheelchair, practically fuming. Such a dilemma. If they knew Mom did all this just to marry her first love, would this family fall apart? I saw the way my whole family looked at Mom, and it had changed. After just a few arguments with the family's adopted son, my mom cruelly threw me out of the 13th floor window, killing me instantly. After death, I didn't dissipate immediately, but became a wisp of a soul following my mom. So, I learned all of Mom's secrets. She married my dad only to climb the social ladder. In reality, she already had a man she loved. She had a son with her first love, who was our family's adopted son, Jason. Ever since marrying my dad, Mom had been plotting how to seize the Miller family's assets for herself, then build a wealthy and happy family with her beloved man and her precious son. But unexpectedly, I was reborn. I returned to the day Mom brought Jason home for adoption. Jason, hurry up and call him Dad, Mom said, bringing Jason before Dad and urging him. Jason was trembling all over, his eyes avoiding everyone's gaze like a frightened little bird. The parts of his arms, unintentionally exposed, were covered in welts from being whipped. It was this pitiful appearance that made Dad feel sympathy for him at first sight and thereafter treat him as his own, even better than me, fearing he might neglect him, just as Dad proactively reached out to take Jason's hand. What should I do? Should I tell Dad? Jason is actually Mom's illegitimate son. I saw Dad holding Jason's hand visibly flinch. He looked left and right, then finally at me. I blinked, looking at him innocently. Dad frowned, thinking he was hallucinating. Next, Jason will throw himself into Dad's arms, crying pitifully to gain Dad's sympathy. The next moment, I saw Jason proactively throw himself into Dad's embrace, then wail loudly. In my previous life, Dad was very moved and cried along with Jason. This time, he couldn't bring himself to cry. His gaze was fixed on me. Leo, were you talking? No, I denied. Then I thought to myself, I can't let Dad know I'm reborn. He'll definitely see me as a monster. Dad's eyes widened like saucers, a look of disbelief on his face. At this moment, Mom kindly stepped forward to console Jason. Jason, stop crying. This will be your home from now on. Then she turned to me. Leo, take Jason to his room. Okay. I readily agreed, silently, thinking, in a moment, Jason is going to fall down the stairs and then say I pushed him. Sure enough, Jason had only walked halfway with me when he suddenly tumbled down the stairs. Mom rushed over, immediately held Jason and asked nervously, Jason, what's wrong with you? It's not Leo's fault. I slipped and accidentally fell down the stairs. Jason said painfully. Mom immediately turned to me sternly. Lo, Jason will be your brother from now on. How can you target him? Have we spoiled you so much that you're capable of any bad deed? Dad had also walked over by now. He was clearly not as agitated as Mom. Seeing Dad, Jason quickly said, Dad, please don't blame Leo. I know he just can't accept my arrival right away. After all, he used to be the only son in the family. I can understand. In the previous life, this was how Jason successfully made Dad prejudiced against me, believing I lacked compassion. Afterward, Jason became even more relentless in slandering me, making Dad increasingly disappointed in me, thus doing on him alone. This time, I thought to myself, it's over. It's over. I'm going to be blamed by Mom and Dad again. No matter how I explain, they won't listen. I'd better not say anything. I saw Dad look at me with a hint of guilt and sadness. The next moment, slap. Dad landed a heavy slap on Jason's face, stunning him. I saw Mom standing there, Momentarily stunned, Dad, fuming, said, I saw it clearly. You fell on your own, and you dared to frame Leo. No wonder you were returned after being adopted. Pitiful people always have their hateful side. Adopting Jason was, of course, Mom's decision. Mom said she saw a pitiful little boy while doing charity work at an orphanage. He had been adopted before, but was abused by that family. She couldn't bear it and wanted to bring him home. She also said that with only me as a boy in the house, bringing him back would give me a companion. Dad, unable to resist Mom's persistent persuasion, agreed. Originally, Mom and Jason had everything well prepared, but unexpectedly, the truth came out on the very first day. Just moments ago, Mom had deliberately stood in front of Dad precisely because she was worried he would see the truth. Jason was so frightened by Dad that he didn't know what to do and could only look to Mom for help. Mom quickly explained, Jason has always been abused and lacks a sense of security, so he might have misperceived some things. It's all a misunderstanding. Look at you, making such a big deal out of it. Don't scare the child. Dad was about to expose Mom's scheme. He suddenly heard my thoughts again. If I expose Mom now, not only will she deny it, but it will also alert her. After all, Mom holds a lot of company shares right now. Dad paused. I continued in my thoughts. My two sisters will definitely side with Mom. Usually, Mom is the gentle mother and Dad is the strict father. If a real fight breaks out, my sisters might even help Mom. Dad fell silent, likely thinking I had a point. He struggled to suppress his temper and said to Mom and Jason, I don't want this to happen a second time. Jason nodded obediently, still looking pitiful. Mr. Wilson, take him to his room. Dad instructed directly. Mr. Wilson quickly took Jason upstairs. Mom still wanted to explain things to Dad. Her purpose, of course, being to make Dad accept and like Jason more quickly. But this time, Dad took my hand and walked away from Mom without looking back. Mom looked at Dad's retreating figure with a bewildered expression. Usually, if she just coaxed out a little, he would be all smiles. Why was he suddenly giving her the cold shoulder? I glanced back at her and couldn't help but give a cold smile. She didn't know her good days were about to end. Did she? Dad took me back to my room. He looked at me seriously. Leo, tell Dad, do you know something about your mother? My expression was innocent, and I quickly shook my head. I don't. No, but in my heart I said I can't say it. Dad will be disappointed. In my past life, when I found out Mom was seeing another man and told Dad, Dad said I was too young to be spreading rumors. Dad also said I had no compassion. That just because Mom doted on Jason a little more. I was trying to stir up trouble. I'm so afraid Dad won't love me anymore. I saw Dad's eyes instantly well up with tears, his face full of heartache and guilt. He said, Leo, you are Dad's son. Dad will love you most in this life. I love Dad most, too. I was very touched and threw myself into his arms. Dad no longer forced me to say more. But after that, I could clearly feel Dad's distance from Mom and Jason. Every time Jason tried to curry favor with Dad, Dad ignored him. When Mom tried to be attentive to Dad, he also paid her no mind. Dad, even who usually didn't go to the company much, started going frequently during this period. I saw Mom and Jason getting a bit anxious. After dinner, they hid in a corner whispering. Jason said, Mom, didn't you say that man was easy to please? But no matter what I do, he's cold to me. Why? Mom said, I don't know what's going on either. He's like a different person. Maybe he's hitting menopause, so he's grumpy. Let's ignore him. Tomorrow, your second sister, Zoe, is coming home for winter break. She's very foolish. You should win her over first. Okay, Jason agreed. You need to replace Leo in this family as soon as possible. Once you become the family favorite, it will be easy for us to get this family's assets, and then we can bring your dad here to enjoy life. Mom instructed. Mom, don't worry. How could Leo, that sheltered fool, be my match? I'll soon win over the whole family, Jason said confidently. It was indeed like that in my previous life. Not only was I unguarded against Jason, but under Mom's brainwashing, I treated him like a real brother. But he plotted against me and framed me at every turn, making the whole family think I was selfish. And in the end, they only doted on him. But in this life, he wouldn't be so lucky. The next day at noon, my second sister, Zoe, came home for winter break. She was a 200 lb girl who never exercised and loved eating junk food. She didn't study either. She played games every day, and the university she attended was bought with family money. In the eyes of outsiders, Zoe was a good-for-nothing. Dad never thought Zoe would turn out like this, but he had indeed spent too much energy on Chloe's education, and Zoe was mainly Mom's responsibility. Mom always told Zoe that with Chloe to hold things up, she just needed to be a carefree, rich kid. Gradually, Zoe completely lost her ambition and only knew how to muddle through life, waiting for death. Zoe. Jason was the first to greet her. He leaned in close to Zoe's ear and whispered, "I heard Mom say you love chips, fried chicken, spicy strips, and instant noodles. I bought them all early and put them in your room. I also bought the Coke you like. Don't tell Dad." Okay. I saw the surprise in Zoe's eyes. Dad didn't allow these things in the house and would even check Zoe's luggage every time she came home, giving her no chance to eat these foods. Previously, Mom would secretly buy them for her. Now it was Jason. I could clearly feel that Zoe instantly developed a strong liking for Jason until she heard my thoughts. Watching Zoe and Jason get close, I pouted and thought to myself, Zoe is already so overweight and she still wants to eat that junk food. Does she really want to be a couch potato for life? I saw the smile on Zoe's fleshy face stiffen. She turned her head, her gaze locking onto me, staring. Even a 3-year-old knows that too much junk food is bad. Hasn't she ever wondered why Mom and Jason give her this stuff? What are you talking about? Zoe asked me angrily. I didn't say anything, I said innocently. Zoe was also a bit surprised because she hadn't actually seen me speak, but the next moment she heard my voice again. It's better not to tell Zoe that Mom deliberately raised her to be useless. Zoe looked at me with even more shock. I continued in my thoughts. But Zoe really will get esophageal cancer from eating too much junk food. And when she dies, she'll be skin and bones. Zoe's eyes widened in disbelief as she stared at me. I turned and walked away, thinking as I went, let Zoe get close to Mom and Jason. Anyway, after Jason came, she stopped loving me. Leo, Zoe called out to me. I turned back. What's wrong, Zoe? You? Zoe hesitated perhaps for a second, wondering if she was hallucinating. She said, I brought you a gift before Jason came into this family. I was the family favorite. Everyone in the family doted on me. Even this rebellious second sister was no exception. I slowly walked over. Zoe handed me an action figure. Do you like it? Yeah, I nodded, but not enthusiastically. I muttered in my heart. She's so nice to me now, but soon she'll only be nice to Jason. Even this action figure will eventually be snatched by Jason. How could that be? This is from your sister. Zoe began. Jason suddenly interjected. Wow, it's so beautiful. I've never seen such an exquisite action figure in my life. It looks so real. Zoe looked at Jason a little annoyed. Jason said with an envious look, Leo is so lucky. Zoe is so good at Leo. If I could have such a beautiful action figure to sleep with, I would definitely be the happiest little boy in the world. In my previous life, Jason used this innocent and pitiful appearance to make Zoe generously tell me to give the action figure to him, saying she would buy me another one as compensation later. In reality, after I gave it to Jason, Zoe never bought me one again. Her affection for me was stolen by Jason. This time without waiting for Zoe to speak, I directly gave the action figure to Jason. If you like it, take it, I thought to myself. Anyway, if I don't give it to him, Zoe will persuade me to. I don't want to make things difficult for Zoe. Jason looked overjoyed. Really? Thank you, Leo. And at that moment, I resignedly thought, Jason will deliberately drop the action figure and then frame me for breaking it just like in the previous life. As soon as I handed the action figure to him and let go, it fell directly to the ground, making the sound of shattering ceramic. Along with it came Jason's devastated cries. Such a beautiful action figure. How could it break? I've dreamed of having one since I was little. While crying, he questioned me. Leo, even if you didn't want to give it to me, you couldn't just break it, could you? Then he quickly said to Zoe, Zoe, please don't blame Leo. He must have been careless, too. Why should I blame Leo? Zoe asked, puzzled, looking at Jason with disgust. Jason was a bit embarrassed and also a little confused. He figured that at this point Zoe would scold me for being petty, but he didn't expect Zoe to ask such a question, making him unable to utter the lines he had prepared. It's your fault for not catching the action figure. If anyone's to blame, it's you. Why blame Leo? It was Leo who deliberately threw it on the ground when he handed it to me. Jason explained in a small voice, then magnanimously added, it's okay. I won't hold it against him. You hold against him? What right do you have to hold anything against him? You made a mistake. Not only do you not repent, but you also try to stir up trouble. What are your intentions? Zoe's voice was loud. Jason's face turned red. From Zoe's words, I'll let you into my house. Get out. Go back where you came from. This family doesn't welcome you. Saying this, Zoe was about to drag Jason away. Jason was so scared he started crying loudly. Mom had originally wanted to give Jason enough space to win over Zoe, so she deliberately wasn't in the living room, and Dad had gone to the company and hadn't returned yet. At this moment, Mom heard the noise and quickly came out. What's going on, Zoe? How can you treat your brother like this? Mom said sternly. Zoe yelled at Mom. He's not my brother. Leo is my brother. You brought him back, right? Sent him away quickly. What nonsense are you talking about? Jason is part of this family now. That he's here. You're so old. Why are you still so sensible? Mom scolded, pulling Jason to her side. And your brother even prepared snacks for you, risking Dad finding out to buy them for you. Yet you're so ungrateful. When Mom mentioned the snacks, I saw Zoe get extremely angry. The moment she wanted to shout at Mom, she suddenly heard my thoughts again. If I were Zoe, I wouldn't argue with Mom right now. It's useless anyway. Mom brought Jason home to seize our family's assets. Zoe should seize this moment to work hard, change for the better, and ultimately catch Mom off guard. Zoe paused, the words on the tip of her tongue swallowed back down. She threw out, anyway, Leo is my only brother. With that, Zoe pulled me away, leaving Mom and Jason staring at each other, completely bewildered. They couldn't understand why our whole family had suddenly become so smart. Why couldn't they deceive us anymore? Back in Zoe's room, Zoe angrily threw away all the snacks Jason had prepared. As if remembering something, she also uninstalled the games on her phone. After doing all that, she suddenly looked at me and asked, seriously, Leo, did I ever disappoint you greatly? I quickly shook my head and encouraged, no, I know Zoe is the best. I didn't forget to add in my heart. Zoe was just deceived by Mom. I know she's very smart and will definitely become an outstanding person in the future. Zoe smiled, looking somewhat touched. She said, Leo, Zoe will work hard to be an outstanding person from now on, and I will never let anyone bully you again. Okay, I believe in you, Zoe. I nodded, emphatically. The first thing Zoe did after returning home was to go to the hospital for a full checkup, then hire a personal trainer and create a weight loss plan. Besides losing weight, Zoe picked up her books again, hired a tutor, and started catching up from elementary school. She spent the entire winter break studying and dieting, which left Mom and Jason dumbfounded. They hadn't done anything, so why had Dad and Zoe changed after Jason came into the family? Dad originally didn't go to the company. All company matters were handled by Mom. Mom was just a little bit away from winning over the company's staff and becoming the real power holder. But as soon as Dad went to the company, those shareholders and senior executives who were originally wavering all stopped siding with Mom. Mom was furious. I heard her secretly talking to Jason again, this time with obvious dissatisfaction towards him. What's wrong with you? Didn't I tell you to come back and win over this family? How did you end up making such a mess? This is getting further and further from my plan. How am I supposed to bring your dad here to enjoy life? Mom's voice was reproachful. I don't know either. I did everything you taught me, but they don't believe me. Jason cried aggrievedly. Mom didn't know what went wrong. She was a bit agitated and just threw caution to the wind. Your eldest sister, Chloe, is coming home for the New Year soon. She trusts me the most and is also the most grateful to me. Don't worry about the others. They're not up to much. Chloe is the designated heir of this family. Yes, I'll definitely perform well this time. I'll make sure Chloe likes me, Jason promised. He probably felt a bit unwilling too. He felt he was better than me in every way. Better at reading people, better at presenting himself. How could he not win the whole family's affection? In my previous life, when Mom threw me off the rooftop, he even arrogantly mocked me, saying he had made me lose everything with just one finger. After I accidentally fell from the rooftop and died on the spot that year, Dad and my two sisters were actually very sad. But it wasn't long before they were deceived by Jason's sweet talk. And not long after that, they were all wiped out by Mom and Jason. Thinking about everything from my previous life, I clenched my teeth. This time it was Mom and Jason's turn to face retribution. A week before the new year, my eldest sister, Chloe, returned from recovering abroad. Half a year ago, the brakes on my sister's car suddenly failed, causing a very serious car accident. That day, Dad and I were traveling abroad. Zoe was at home playing games, and Mom was the first to rush to save Chloe. It was said that the rain was particularly heavy that day. The road had collapsed, and the ambulance couldn't reach the accident scene immediately. It was Mom who carried Chloe on her back for several kilometers to get her to the ambulance, and the whole process was filmed by passers-by. Everyone was praising the greatness of maternal love. Our whole family's affection for Mom deepened. But the truth was Mom had arranged for someone to tamper with the car because Chloe was the family heir. So Mom wanted her out of the picture early. If Chloe died and Zoe was useless, then there was only me left. In Mom's mind, I was easy to deal with. She could just bring Jason into the family to replace me. This way, the family business would logically fall into her and her son's hands. But unexpectedly, Chloe didn't die on the spot after the accident. Mom originally didn't want to save her, but she was filmed by passers-by, so she had no choice but to stage this tragic drama. Chloe was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. She survived, but her legs were paralyzed. Mom suggested Chloe go abroad for continued treatment, saying the medical equipment there was more advanced and would help her recovery. She even actively helped Chloe contact the best private hospital. The result was predictable. After half a year, Chloe's legs showed no improvement. Chloe, you're finally back. I've been really wanting to see you. Jason ran up to Chloe, smiling like a social butterfly. He said, I've heard Mom talk about you so much, saying you're mature, composed, handsome, and dashing. Seeing you is better than hearing about you. You're better looking than I imagined. Chloe had become very insecure and even somewhat withdrawn due to her disability. For a while, Dad and I would often fly abroad to see her, but she always sent us away. She didn't want to see anyone, only Mom. Eventually, we didn't dare to visit her anymore. Now, Jason's proactive approach clearly made Chloe a bit uncomfortable. Yet, she seemed unable to resist his enthusiasm. His eyes were full of joy at seeing her. Chloe, you must be tired after such a long flight, right? Let me give you a massage. Saying this, he very actively started massaging Chloe's back, constantly asking, Chloe, is this comfortable? I knew you were coming back, so I specially learned how to massage. The masseur also taught me how to massage legs to help blood circulation. When you're back, I'll massage them for you every day. Okay, I saw Chloe look a bit awkward, but in the end, she accepted. This time I had no thoughts. Let Jason show off for now. As the saying goes, the higher you climb, the harder you fall. If you don't give them a little taste of sweetness, how can you push them to the brink in the end? After that, Jason quickly won over Chloe. He, who was originally a bit self-doubting, became as flamboyant as a peacock at home ever since Chloe accepted him. Mom was also very gratified. How could the son she had painstakingly cultivated for so many years be completely useless? How could he be inferior to even me? So they began to make their big move. Jason's 15th birthday was scheduled for 2 days before the new year. Mom busied herself organizing a grand birthday party for Jason at home, inviting all the relatives and friends, which also served to formally introduce him to them. Dad was unwilling. He now had no good feelings for Jason, even deep malice. After all, no one would willingly raise their wife's illegitimate child. To avoid alerting the enemy, Dad endured it. However, Dad didn't participate in the preparations for Jason's birthday party, leaving it all to Mom out of sight, out of mind. Mom was, of course, very happy to do it. She had put a lot of effort into this birthday party. So, on Jason's birthday, many people came to the house. Mom invited almost all important relatives and friends to celebrate Jason's birthday. The large villa was bustling with excitement. Jason wore a handsome pink suit and stayed by Mom's side. Mom was enthusiastically introducing Jason to everyone. Dad couldn't stand it and went back to his room, claiming he had something to do. Zoe didn't even come downstairs, her excuse being that she had to study. Only Chloe, who had never socialized since her legs became disabled after the accident, still appeared in the hall for Jason. Jason, after accompanying Mom on a round of greetings, appeared before me. I happened to be alone in the dessert area, eating. He said with a grin, "Leo, this suit I'm wearing was a gift from Chloe. I heard it's very expensive. I love it. Do you think it looks good?" Jason twirled a few times in front of me, deliberately showing off. It was the same in the previous life. He used this method to fuel my resentment towards him, then made himself appear weak and helpless. I had indeed fallen for his trick before and had a very unpleasant conflict with him. This led to the entire family and even everyone attending his birthday party accusing me of not being sensible enough. This time I couldn't be bothered with him and just said lightly, "It's really nice. It suits you. Aren't you jealous?" Jason, seeing I hadn't fallen for it, continued to stir up trouble. "Not jealous at all," I said magnanimously. "Chloe bought me many nice clothes before. Today is your birthday, and she bought you a suit. What's there to be jealous about? I thought you'd be unhappy. I heard you used to be the most attached to Chloe. These past few days, Chloe has spent more time with me to help me adjust to this family. I was worried you'd be upset. It's good that you're not. I misunderstood you. You're not that dependent on Chloe." At that moment, Chloe happened to roll over in her wheelchair. I don't know what Jason had been saying to Chloe these past few days. Anyway, Chloe clearly had a protective instinct towards Jason. Seeing us alone, together now, she was afraid I would bully Jason, so she came over. Jason, of course, saw her. These words were deliberately spoken for Chloe to hear. He wanted to tell Chloe that my feelings for her weren't as deep as his. "Didn't Mom say you were new to this family and unfamiliar, so we should all take more care of you? Am I supposed to be like you, pushing my luck and monopolizing Chloe all the time?" I asked him, feigning confusion. Jason was made a bit uncomfortable by my words, but only for a second. The next moment, he shamelessly started accusing me. "Are you blaming me for monopolizing Chloe? But you just said you didn't mind." As he spoke, tears streamed down his face as if they were free. Anyone who didn't know would think I had done something to him. Chloe, seeing Jason crying so hard, her voice turned a bit deep. "What's going on?" "And nothing," Jason said pitifully. "I'll definitely be more mindful in the future. Leo, please don't be angry, okay? I came to this family to join you, not to break you up." Even though it was the second time I heard it, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. How shameless did Jason have to be to say such a thing? Leo, Chloe, seeing the smirk on my lips, her face darkened further. Without even asking for the details, she immediately sided with Jason. Jason just came to this family. He's not familiar with anything. Dad and Zoe are ignoring him. As his younger brother, can't you take care of him a little? Does Chloe really think I should take care of him? I asked her seriously. Shouldn't you? Chloe retorted, "You've been spoiled by the family since you were little. You don't know how to yield. At all. As it happens, now that Jason is here, you should also learn how to get along with your peers." With that, Chloe was about to take Jason aside, leaving me alone in the banquet hall. Even though I had experienced this once in my previous life, I still felt very uncomfortable. I suppressed my impulse. After all, the good show was yet to come. I watched as Chloe prepared to leave with Jason. They had just taken 2 steps when Jason's pink suit suddenly ripped with a hiss. The back of the suit was easily stepped on. However, I didn't step on it. It was Jason who, while Chloe wasn't looking, deliberately stepped on his own clothes. The moment Chloe turned her head, he quickly hit his foot, then covered the somewhat indecent area exposed due to the torn clothes. He looked completely devastated and couldn't help but loudly question me. "Leo, how could you do this to me?" Only Chloe had noticed the little tiff between Jason and me. Perhaps Mom too. Mom was fully prepared for tonight. At this moment, because of Jason's shriek, everyone in the hall was drawn over. Jason looked even more devastated and ashamed. Chloe quickly took off her suit jacket and handed it to Jason. Jason took it looking aggrieved and wrapped it tightly around himself like a frightened little bird evoking pity. "What's wrong?" Mom also came over at this point. Jason stammered, afraid to speak in front of so many people. "Chloe, what exactly happened?" Mom asked Chloe. Chloe was blunt, not sparing me any face, and directly blamed me. "Leo stepped on Jason's clothes and ripped them." "Leo, how could you treat your brother like that? It's his birthday today. Can't you be less jealous? He's never had a proper birthday in 15 years. Never had a proper birthday. So, were you celebrating with a dog every year?" At this moment, there were some murmurs in the hall. Is Leo really that spoiled? How could he embarrass Jason like this in public? No matter what, Jason is now a son of this family since he entered their home. How can Leo be so domineering? I heard this Jason kid has had a very hard life. Leo really has no empathy at all. Everyone was blaming me. I saw Mom and Jason could barely hide their triumphant smiles. They thought their scheme was about to succeed. I calmly began to send my thoughts to Chloe. No matter how I explain now, it's useless, right? Even my dearest sister Chloe thinks I deliberately stepped on Jason's suit. I saw Chloe freeze for a moment. She was clearly a bit puzzled. Why did she hear my voice when she didn't see me speak? I continued. Actually, it's nothing for me to be wronged, but I really don't want Chloe to be kept in the dark about everything by Mom. If Chloe knew Mom hired someone to cause her leg injury, would she be heartbroken? She loves Mom so much. I don't want Chloe to be sad. Chloe was sitting in her wheelchair, and I watched her face suddenly change drastically. Her hands gripped the sides of the wheelchair tightly, her body trembling with anger. Jason was very close to Chloe. He immediately sensed the change in Chloe's emotions, and a smile almost escaped his lips. He thought Chloe was standing up for him, that Chloe was angry at me. Jason probably felt the time was ripe and quickly said, "Leo, if you dislike me this much, I'll leave this family." Being able to come to this family and enjoy this month of happiness with a dad, mom, sister, and brother, I already feel very happy. I dare not ask for more. I don't want to make you unhappy, Leo. If you're unhappy, no matter how much I like this family, I won't feel happy. Jason's heartfelt words instantly moved everyone. Relatives and friends began to criticize me again for him. "Leo, this is you being insensible. Jason is being so considerate of you. Why can't you get along with him? Listen to your aunt. Apologize to Jason. Don't be so willful. Jason is so kind-hearted. Having such a brother is your blessing. Hurry up and apologize to your brother. Don't hurt his feelings." Seeing so many people on his side, Jason became even more confident. He said, "Please don't make things difficult for Leo. I don't want him to be sad in this family." He paused, seeming a bit sad, and after a long moment said, "I was adopted anyway. I never belonged to this family. Please don't talk about Leo. If he doesn't like me, I should leave. Since I brought you home, you belong to this family," Mom said firmly, playing along with Jason. I have nothing that belongs to this family, Jason said sadly. I have nothing. I haven't made any contribution to this family. How can you be so unconfident? Mom said with a helpless tone. Mom, please send me to the orphanage tonight. That's where I belong. How can I prove that you have status and identity in our family? How can I make you feel that our whole family welcomes you? Mom looked very anxious, like an ant on a hot pan, desperate to keep Jason, but unable to think of a better way. If I hadn't experienced it once myself, I would have been fooled by her again. The pity mom didn't become an award-winning actress. She had been acting flawlessly in our Miller family for over a decade. Mom wasn't actually my biological mother. My biological mother passed away in an accident less than a year after I was born. Mom was just a junior manager in Dad's company. After learning that Dad was widowed, she began to pursue him aggressively. Dad hadn't considered Mom at all before. He had deep feelings for my biological mother, but he couldn't resist Mom's efforts, which started with me and my two sisters. She was very good to us, so good that my two sisters, Dad, and I were all taken aback. When I was 3, I had a very high fever. Dad was supporting the company alone after my biological mother passed away and happened to have an urgent company matter that day, so he couldn't leave. That night, it was Mom who volunteered to take me to the hospital. When Dad finished his work and rushed to the hospital, he saw Mom holding me asleep on the hospital bed. For 2 whole years, Dad was finally moved by Mom. Relatives, including those from my biological mother's side, all persuaded Dad to accept Mom. Dad finally let down his guard and married Mom. When Mom got married, she even made a public vow, saying she would love Dad for a lifetime, take care of me and my 2 sisters for a lifetime, and that she would only have us 3 children in her life. Mom kept her word and didn't have any more children with Dad for over a decade. Actually, there was a time when Dad considered having children with Mom. The family was well off, and they could afford to raise a few more children. He also hoped to leave Mom with a bloodline, but Mom disagreed, saying that 3 children were her bloodline, and she was very content. Seeing Mom so firm, Dad didn't insist further, but his feelings for Mom clearly deepened. Later, my 2 sisters and I all started calling her Mom. In the eyes of outsiders, Mom was devoted and great. No one could have imagined that all of this was Mom's conspiracy. She didn't have children with Dad because she already had a son with her childhood sweetheart. She also didn't want any ties with Dad through children. From the very beginning, she wanted our family to be destroyed. In a previous life, she indeed succeeded. She snatched Dad's company, drove Dad to jump off a building, left Chloe to fend for herself abroad with crippled legs, watched Zoe die from illness, and pushed me off the rooftop, ensuring I died with grievances. She, along with her childhood sweetheart and her precious son, Jason, brazenly enjoyed everything that belonged to our Miller family. At this moment, someone in the hall suddenly shouted, "Isn't that simple? Jason doesn't feel secure in this family, so you give him security. Give him shares in Miller Corporation. Now, once he has shares, who can say he's not a Miller?" The person speaking, though a relative on Dad's side, had long been bought by Mom. And the reason she used this method was also because Mom had succeeded with it before. Back then, Mom, in order to share the burden for Dad, became a senior executive in the company. However, she was criticized for not being competent enough for the position. All self-chestrated by Mom, of course. Dad, in a fit of anger, gave Mom 20% of the shares. Now, Mom wanted to use the same trick again. "I can't accept it. I can't." Jason quickly refused, looking considerate and aggrieved. In the previous life, Dad gave these shares. Dad felt sorry for Jason and gave him 10% of the shares. At that time, Dad only had 30%. So after giving Jason 10, he was left with 20. Of the other shares, 20% were in Chloe's hands, 20% in Mom's, and another 30% were distributed among various non-family shareholders. Mom used her 20% in Jason's 10%, then secretly acquired some shares from other shareholders and also set a trap for my sister to take out 10% becoming the largest shareholder of Miller Corporation. This time, Dad wasn't here. I saw Mom shift her gaze to Chloe. She said, "Chloe, Mom has never asked you for anything. You also know that the shares Mom holds are to better help your dad with his work at the company. You're currently recuperating and don't need to work. Give Jason 10% for now, and Mom will find a way to make it up to you later." Mom said it as if it were a matter of course. She didn't think Chloe would refuse her. How could she refuse? Just now, Chloe had publicly embarrassed me to defend Jason. If she gave Jason the shares now, it would be the best lesson for me. She felt Chloe couldn't refuse, but she hadn't noticed that Dad and Zoe had come downstairs. A servant must have informed them. Dad and Zoe were afraid I would be at a disadvantage, so they rushed down. So at this moment, the whole family heard my thoughts together. If Chloe gives her shares to Jason, Mom will be one step closer to seizing our family's assets. Actually, Chloe's leg isn't incurable. Mom just never seriously tried to get it treated. The doctors abroad were deliberately arranged by her. Such a dilemma. If they knew Mom did all this just to marry her first love, would this family fall apart? I saw the way the whole family looked at Mom, and it had completely changed. Chloe was so angry. Her hair was practically smoking. At this moment, Jason was still deliberately refusing, acting cute in front of Chloe. "Mom, I don't want it. How can I take Chloe's shares?" "Chloe, don't listen to Mom. I wouldn't be so insensible." As he spoke, he even proactively reached out to take Chloe's arm, wanting to act cute and charming. But as soon as he touched Chloe, there was a loud thud. He was pushed to the ground by Chloe with a sudden force, looking exceptionally disheveled, stunning everyone. Even Jason was so shocked he forgot to cry out in pain. Mom was the first to react in disbelief. "Chloe, what are you doing? How can you treat Jason like that? Are you out of your mind?" "Huh?" Chloe sneered. The look in her eyes towards Mom was as if she wanted to cut her into 1,000 pieces. In my previous life, after I died and became a soul following Mom, the moment I learned the truth, I also wished I could bite Mom to death, but I couldn't. I calmed myself, thinking, Chloe has no evidence to accuse Mom right now. No one will believe her, and they'll think our whole family is bullying Jason. It's not worth letting Mom and Jason tarnish our family's reputation. There are security cameras in the house. If we replay the footage, we'll know if Jason was framing me. I saw my sister struggling to control herself. Mom was still berating Chloe, saying her temperament had changed since the accident. Others also thought Mom had a point and sided with her until Chloe instructed, "Mr. Wilson, pull up the surveillance footage from the hall just now." As soon as Jason heard surveillance, he panicked. He quickly looked at Mom. Mom was also a bit flustered and said, "Why are you pulling up the surveillance footage?" Chloe ignored her. Mom roared at Mr. Wilson, "No need to pull up the footage. I make the decisions in this house." Dad spoke, his aura powerful and chilling. "Mr. Wilson, play the footage." "Yes, sir." Seeing that the situation was irreversible, Jason quickly got up from the floor. "Since Chloe doesn't welcome me, and the whole family doesn't welcome me, then I'll leave. I'll just leave." "No, one is allowed to leave until my brother's name is cleared," Chloe reprimanded. Although her legs were currently disabled, she was, after all, the heir personally groomed by Dad, and her presence was no less imposing than Dad's. It was just the accident that had temporarily made her despondent. Jason didn't dare to speak. Mom tried to speak several times, but eventually closed her mouth. The surveillance footage was played, and everyone saw clearly that Jason had deliberately torn his own suit, and then, like a villain, falsely accused me. Public opinion immediately reversed. Jason wasn't drowned in saliva at this moment. Even with the thickest skin, he was humiliated to death. Send him away. Dad didn't waste any more words. I never want to see him again. No, I'm not leaving. Jason couldn't bear it when he heard he was being sent away. He had just started living in this nice house, just acquired the status of a young master of the Miller family. He couldn't bear to leave. It had to be said, Mom hadn't dared to give Jason and his father too much over the years, fearing exposure. What Jason was enjoying in our Family now was naturally completely different from what he enjoyed with his father. I'll never do it again. I'll never do it again. Dad, please give me another chance. Okay. Jason cried his heart out. If everyone hadn't seen his true colors, they would have been deceived by him again. Dad didn't even look at him. Send him away. Don't dirty this house. Mom. Mom. Jason pleaded with Mom again. Mom, of course, wasn't stupid. She knew Jason was useless and decisively cut ties with him. I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. I misjudged you. I'll send you away right now. As she said to Dad, I really didn't expect him to be such an actor. I'll send him away immediately. Don't be angry. Dad chuckled lightly. Looking at Mom now was like watching a clown. Mom thought Dad was just angry and didn't think much of it. So, she dragged Jason away. Although Mom loved her first love and her biological child very much, she valued money even more. Otherwise, she wouldn't have abandoned her husband and child for money. So, after Jason was kicked out this time, he wouldn't have a good life. Mom would definitely blame everything on Jason. Of course, for our whole family, this wasn't important. What was important was how to make Mom lose everything and get what she deserved. After Mom sent Jason away, the first thing she did when she returned was to apologize to our entire family in front of all the guests. Mom was very remorseful and appeared very innocent. She said she didn't know Jason was like that. She had been deceived by him, too. She had been so good to Jason, and her feelings were deeply hurt. Dad said bluntly, the one who was hurt the most is Leo. He was almost framed by Jason. Mom quickly nodded. Yes, Leo was hurt the most. This Mom's fault. Mom apologizes to you. Okay. Mom promises never to be soft-hearted and adopt other children again. You are Mom's only son. I wanted to vomit, but I held it back. Dad said, since harm has been done, few words of comfort are too insincere. You should make substantial compensation. Then Leo, tell Mom what do you want? I'll give you anything. Mom said sincerely. Anything? I asked her. Innocently. Of course. Was Mom ever gone back on her word? Mom promised. She thought she could, as always, buy my heart with just a little candy. I want Mom's shares in Miller Corporation, I said directly. I saw Mom's expression visibly change. After a long pause, she stammered. You're only 14. Shares aren't practical for you. But Mom just said she was going to give shares to Jason. Am I not as important as Jason in Mom's eyes? I asked her, looking hurt, seemingly, casually remarking, is Jason your biological son? This sentence directly scared Mom. How could that be? Don't talk nonsense. I only have you as a son. Then why was Mom willing to give shares? To Jason, but not to me? My shares are to help your father in the company. No. Dad said. Chloe has already agreed to go to work at the company. Chloe isn't. Mom didn't believe it. She was convinced Chloe would remain despondent. I'm the eldest daughter of the family. I should bear the family's responsibilities, Chloe said, word by word. Mom gritted her teeth, clearly, still unwilling, but couldn't find a reason to refuse. Can Mom give me the shares now? You just said you would. Agree to anything I asked. I looked at her expectantly. With so many people in the hall, all the guests were watching her. If she refused, she wouldn't be able to save face. She gritted her teeth. Right now, she didn't dare to tear a rift with her family. In her view, if she tore off the facade, she would only have this 20% of the shares. If she didn't, she still had a chance to make a comeback. She had spent so many years getting to this point. How could she be reconciled? She said, okay. Mom reluctantly parted with her shares. I said happily, is Mom going to give me all her shares? 10% will be enough for you. I asked your sister to give Jason that much too. Mom bargained. In Mom's eyes, shouldn't I be more important than Jason? I said, looking hurt. Mom didn't speak for a long time, clearly unwilling. Dad said bluntly, when you took my shares, you repeatedly said you wouldn't want them, that they would all be left for the children. Now that it's just giving them to Leo a bit earlier to compensate for his hurt feelings, you're not willing. Mom was cornered by Dad and couldn't back down. With so many relatives and friends watching, her once good mother image, whether to maintain it or not was up to her.